Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Chisme and Shadows podcast. This is your host, Miguel, and it's a pleasure to have you guys here for episode 10. Yes, our podcast has officially hit number 10, and it has been such a fun experience for me. I'll continue to be doing this because so far it's just been nothing but fun, and as it continues to be fun, it's just nothing stopping me, really. But yeah, no, today you're in for quite a treat. We're going to be having a lot of stories brought in from a lot of different people, none of which volunteered for this, but at the same time they did because a lot of these stories are pulled out straight out of Reddit, where people seem to feel really comfortable in sharing a lot about their personal lives, probably a lot more than I would. In all honesty, but to each their own, and I applaud them. Great confidence, although they are anonymous technically, nonetheless. So yeah, today we will get into some very juicy relationship advice, some just straight up advice about social situations and just inner feelings. And we'll finish it off with a tale that just screams, what in the world, really? At least I can't seem to quite put my finger on it, at least. Like always, I really like to start out with just a couple of updates. Nothing too major has changed, I suppose. But if we wanted an update on a story we've talked about before in the past, which I will just get the smallest update, and that's there just isn't. I think with the more time that's passed, the more I've come to realize, and honestly, the more I've come to understand that person, that coworker, and as such, I don't necessarily take everything back because I don't really have the opinion of that I said, what I said was wrong. It wasn't wrong, but my overall opinion on the situation has slightly changed since then. And that continues to be true because I haven't seen anything to say otherwise. I will say it's a completely different way of handling social situations than what I would personally do. But of course, we all have our own different experiences and we all have a different comfort level in terms of confrontation and everything. So, and then we've talked about that in the past, so it's not really dive too deep into that. And for people on YouTube, I'll welcome you back to this wonderful video format that we've come to get. The ability to comment, share, and like the video are always there. Please subscribe to the channel if you have not done so yet. Go ahead and share the channel to other people as well. I mean, people who enjoy podcasts, people who don't enjoy podcasts might still enjoy the podcast. I will make sure I give out plenty of shorts so then people could just get a little bit of snippets. Sometimes I release like 10-minute video portions from the podcast. Sometimes, I feel like that will do pretty good. I often watch 10-minute snippets from other podcasts, especially if, when the topic kind of intrigues me a little bit. But yeah, and if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you're probably way behind, and that is mostly my fault because I have not been keeping up with making sure to upload on Spotify, and Apple is a little bit of an itchy situation. It's just they didn't necessarily make it easy to upload. So unfortunately, that's just kind of the situation with that. First story we're gonna be diving into is a situation. It's from somebody on Reddit. Now, this user on Reddit happened to have deleted his account, probably because let's just assume he ended up with the answers he wanted and then had no reason to remain on Reddit. I'm just gonna go with that because otherwise it's also the opposite. And I don't want to think that he got, you know, bullied into leaving Reddit. Hopefully that wasn't the case. But yeah, his situation is basically he has some feelings of loneliness, which all of us do, but it's to the point where even in his friend groups, he still just doesn't, that feeling doesn't go away. And that is actually a very common feeling a lot of us tend to have. So we're going to discuss it. So let's go ahead and see what his situation's all about. So my main friend group is a bunch of people from summer camp, and we hang out on Discord all the time. I recently moved away, and they have been the only people to really keep up with me. Sometimes, though, I just feel like I don't belong. They will all be talking about some YouTuber, anime, art, or something that I don't know, and I'll just kind of be there, not really doing anything. They'll even ask, "Hey, is blank still in the call?" Or, and I'll just say, "Yep, I'm here." I do try to talk, but every time I try to start a convo, no one is interested and just ignores what I said. It's really the best. it's really best when we're doing a group activity together, like playing Among Us. Strangely, I love talking to everyone on one to one, but when our whole group is talking, I feel like I don't fit. I really don't know what to do. I have no friends in my new location, and they're the only people I still talk to. They're all great friends, and we all care for each other. I just don't know what to do. Okay, and that's a situation that happens to the best of us. And now, listen here. The want or the need to feel like we belong is natural to humans in general. So never feel like you're in the wrong for wanting that sort of feeling of belonging, right? So, with that in mind, because of that, sometimes we are also blinded by our desire to fit in, where we kind of don't let it naturally happen. Instead, we're trying to force it with. And here's the thing, the feeling of belonging does not need to be supplemented with just any old group. And I know that this user in particular had said that they're all friends and that he has a good time talking to them one on one. But the dynamic when it comes to groups is completely different, and you don't need to be part of that group. And I know that sounds crazy because you're like, well, there's my only friends. They're the only friends I have. Well, like you had just mentioned, you're okay talking to them one on one. So for a while, I would say just talk to them one on one. That dynamic of a friend of a group, like a group of people, is actually very difficult for even the best of friends. The more people there are, the harder it is to get your social input in because not everybody does good in big groups. And you may be friends with everybody there, but it's still not going to change the fact that in big groups, you still don't really know how to get your words out. And that's fine. It's the situation happens to be that uh, when there's a lot of people, you need to be loud, and not everybody are loud people, and that's why it's extra hard for a lot of people to feel like they belong in a big group because they're looking at it from the perspective of the loud the loud parts of everybody that have to happen because they're in a large group, right? So when you're in a large group, for example, a lot of people are going to be going the extra mile to be heard, to be loud. Everybody's putting in that effort, and not really effort, but everybody's putting that side if they have it. There will be people in that group that are naturally loud and naturally can handle those big group situations. They're going to be driving the conversations. And because of that, honestly, everybody around tends to just, you know, be, they just tend to fall in place. So those people are going to be really, really driving the conversation topics as well. So if they happen to be a lot more into this particular anime or YouTuber scene, then that's the topic they're going to be doing. And unfortunately, that's what's going to happen with larger and larger groups. And if you're not comfortable in that type of situation, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But you need to realize that you need to just step out. You don't need to be in that situation. You just don't. Nobody does if you're just not comfortable. And to be honest, I kind of find myself in that position all the time. I have a lot of friends that I get along with just fine. And when it's two, three of us, even four of us, it's 100% fine. All of us get our input in. There's nobody truly cogging the conversation, as you know. But when more and more people get added, honestly, those connections with everybody start to loosen a little bit. Because let's be honest here. I know you had said you're perfectly fine having one on ones with everybody, but it's so rare to truly actually have the same level of friendship with everybody in bigger groups. Chances are there's going to be a couple of people that just aren't like at that level as a couple of other ones, and thus it's going to be a lot harder to be comfortable at like the same comfort level in talking to everybody. And when you're in a large group, it does actually matter. And thus, when I'm in a way larger group, I start to get a couple of people that I would say I'm okay with, find them cool, but I'm not necessarily like really good friends with them. And now there's 3 or 4 people that I'm just like, sometimes I'll talk to. They're okay. I would say they're fine. Sometimes depending on the group, sometimes I consider them friends, sometimes not. But either way, I start to realize, I'm like, wait, I have no input and there is no benefit in being there. And that's going to be the truth. And that's going to be the hard truth to realize sometimes, that it's okay to understand that you're not benefiting from being part of that group anymore. It's not really positive, or you're not really getting anywhere anymore from that conversation in that type of large group. The only ones who at that point really feel that, driving force or benefiting from it is going to be the really loud ones that take over the whole group dynamic. And that's 100% normal. I wouldn't blame them at all either, because that's who they are. That tends to be a personality type. So I oftentimes just walk away. And you know what ends up happening? Sometimes a couple of those friends that have like very similar feelings break away as well. Next thing you know, I'm with 2 or 3 other friends now, and we're like our own little smaller group, and that is 100% okay with me. And if that doesn't happen, that's fine with me too, because sometimes being by yourself honestly is more beneficial than being in that large group, having that feeling of not quite fitting in. Because believe me, I feel exactly the same way every once in a while in these large groups as well. And when the conversation topic doesn't seem quite like something I enjoy, I find it just okay to walk away. Just walk away. There is no harm, no foul. Chances are your friends will understand. In fact, they'll probably not make a big deal about it, because there's just nothing to make a big deal about. And in fact, if you want to stay in that group, it's 100% okay to just be there and enjoy just the energy of your friends. You don't necessarily have to care at all about what their conversation is. You don't need to have an inch at all in terms of, a topic. You don't, it doesn't matter if you don't care at all about what they're talking about. And you can enjoy the presence, because that's not always going to be the case. And now keep in mind, if it's always the case where they talk about things you have no interest in, then the situation completely changes. Now at that point, but then you really do have to think about the idea of possibly going and meeting new people and making new friends, because the honest truth is that's just something a lot of us have to go through. And it is a really hard thing to do, and that will be a topic discussed another day, and that's just making new friends, which I feel like a lot of people struggle with. I definitely am no master of it, but we could definitely dive into that together, and we all can become better at it together using all of our experiences together. So yeah, no, I hope, user, I know you're no longer on Reddit, but I really do hope you ended up with getting the answers you were looking for. And to everybody else who is listening to this right now, I hope you took something out of this, because actually, I do know a couple of people who have had similar thoughts and similar questions. So it's definitely not an individual thing. You're not alone if you think this way at all. And now we're going to be diving into something we haven't really done on here, and it's going to be very interesting, because it's going to take we're going to be getting a perspective from somebody who, if I'm being honest here, has not dated anybody in just a couple of years now. I have been single. It's both by choice and not, meaning I haven't gone out there and really searched. So that's my choice. But also, I've always been open for the last couple of years for something in my life if it happened to pass by. And that part is the part where you don't really have any say in, whether somebody comes into your life naturally. That's completely random. The search for it to purposely go in there and explore the dating scene, that is by choice. So that's why I could be both by choice and not. And now we're going to be diving into a story here by another Reddit user. Reddit user Vivid Clerk. If you run into this video, then I hope I made it in time to give you a little bit of advice. Otherwise, Anybody else could take anything from this as well, because a lot of these conversations are oftentimes experienced by a lot of other people. And that's what we don't tend to realize sometimes is we all kind of share these universal questions sometimes. And I think we could all help each other if we really wanted to. I like yapping. I'm a yapper, and that's something I've only come to realize the last couple of weeks. The more I do my podcast, the more I realize I talk nonstop. But here's the thing: I know how to do the opposite. And when a topic doesn't interest me, or when I don't want to talk to the individual, I won't, and it doesn't hurt me. It does not hurt me at all. So let's see what Vivid Clerk has questions about. And now here's the title. My wife, 32 female, expects me, 31-year-old male, to share my salary but refuses to share hers. We've been in a relationship for 8 years, married for 4. Recently, my wife found out that my salary increased and she became furious that I didn't tell her earlier. I understand where she's coming from and why it may have felt like I was keeping something from her. The thing is, she's never shared her salary with me, and when I've asked in the past, she says a wife doesn't need to tell her husband how much she makes, but a husband should be open about it. She believes it's only the husband's duty to share financial details. To me, this doesn't feel fair. I believe transparency should go both ways in a marriage. I'm not against sharing my income with her. In fact, I want us to be open about our finances, but it's hard to be fully open when it feels so one sided. I've tried bringing this up, but the conversation quickly turns into her accusing me of lying or hiding money. It becomes a pattern over time when I express my feelings or try to set boundaries. I'm met with blame or suspicion. I'm feeling emotionally drained and unsure how to continue in this kind of dynamic. I want a fair and trusting relationship, but right now I feel stuck. Has anyone else dealt with this kind of situation? How do you navigate financial transparency when one partner has different expectations about roles and fairness? Vivid Clerk, your questions are completely valid. I'll tell you that right now. But this is a much more complicated answer than what you're probably expecting. And this is for everybody else who's listening and has any similar issues, or if you ever come across a similar issue in your relationship. And now, here's the thing, this is one of those conversations that unfortunately has to be talked about, discussed early in the relationship, because it really does come to fundamental values sometimes on whether or not, financial responsibility goes to one person or the other. And sharing information is going to be one of those things you talk about, especially early on. And unfortunately, Vivid Clerk is in a much tougher situation because he's let this relationship be okay with the unfairness that he feels for such a long time. And once you have a habit or have something in a relationship, that's been done for such a long time, boy, it is hard to unravel that complication. So, Vivid Clerk, here's what I would specifically tell you. Honestly, the conversation is one of those that's going to have to be said, and you're going to have to realize going into the conversation, this is going to 100% be a very, very tough situation. This could actually resolve in even your relationship ending, unfortunately. Yeah, is that serious, because it comes down to more than just her not wanting to share information, her financial situation, whatever, and expecting you to do it. That is just the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, because that really honestly shows a much deeper issue in your relationship, and that's you don't have the same values in a relationship. She has expectations, and I'm sure she's had the expectations from early in the relationship of the husband being even probably a provider, is what I'm getting at, and the husband obviously needing to be the one to have the financial responsibility in the relationship. And she probably just expects her money that she's making to be like her money, or her, she thinks that of separate. Because she sees what she makes as a separate thing from the relationship. That's why it's so hard for her to reveal that information, because it doesn't make any sense for this thing that is separate from the relationship to be discussed. And it's so easy for her to ask you because she expects yours to be the relationship's financial situation, right? So that's why it's so hard and it's such a tough ask. So when you come to the realization and when you understand that this is going to be one of those conversations that are so heavy that the potential is there for you guys to, split, then you're ready to do the conversation. And you cannot stop the conversation once it gets tough, once you realize how much negative feedback you're getting, how much resistance you're getting. Unfortunately, you just gotta, just go through it, just tough it out, as sucky as, that might be. And then for everybody else, if you are going into a relationship, it is going to be important. It doesn't have to be super early in the relationship, but at one point you will have to talk about these issues because they often in the beginning aren't issues yet. They're just things you talk about. And the thing is, sometimes people don't think they're important enough, right, to have early on. You think, even if by chance we don't align, we'll make it work. But to be honest, I would say talking about money is as important as talking about having kids. I honestly do think they're both topics you talk about early on. And remember, this isn't first date type of thing. It can be if you're both comfortable with it, but honestly, first date talking about whether you're gonna have kids, I'd say most often than not, that's not gonna end well. So maybe not first date, but early in the relationship, yeah, that put that on the list of stuff to ask about. Yeah, you have to be on the same page. And to be honest, if you're not on the same page, it is okay to not continue the relationship because of it. It is a topic that is okay to have as a relationship stopper, I guess. Because if you guys had a difference in opinion on whether to have kids or not, you would stop the relationship early on, right? Some people don't actually. Surprisingly, some people don't because they have this idea of changing someone's mind in the future. Let me stop you early on. Do not go into a relationship believing something so fundamental can be changed in the future. Don't get me wrong, there is the potential to change somebody's mind, but if you are betting on that, there's going to be a lot of people who lose that bet. So that's what I will say. I hope you guys took something from that advice. As I grow older, I have kind of a nuance on a lot of these topics, and even though so I will be going into some of them with not as much experience as others, uh, the bit of age I have, and I'm not old, but I'm older. That's enough to give me perspective, and that's enough to be able to at least give some type of advice. And I'm not a professional, so but I feel like most people should understand that before listening to somebody on a podcast, right? Even though I'm not a professional, I think a lot of people will be able to take my advice and do some stuff with it. Because I don't know, I'm a little biased, but I think my advice is good. I like giving advice. I like to yap about giving advice. And if you have a difference in opinion, that's totally fine as well. I personally am never okay with, some people going as mean, in comments, but criticism, it's hard to hear, but that's totally fine. And now I kind of want to go a little bit out there and, we'll get away from the advice, I guess, and we'll talk about some situations that I think are just on a whole other level. Okay, we're going to be diving into some petty revenge. And because pettiness, I think there's a lot of people who carry that with them. I think a lot more people are petty than they realize. Pettiness might even be in all of us, really. And I just think in some people, it's on a much, much more higher level. And sometimes it's just kind of fun to hear these stories and see what type of craziness sometimes people get into. This happens all around us, and some people are brave enough to allow us to hear their petty stories. So that's what we're going to be looking into and listening to. Okay, now this next story comes from a user named Escape Fan. Escape Fan, I'm very excited to hear what type of petty craziness you have gone into. I'm not going to say you should or should not be petty because all of us are, and I think I am at some level. But personally, I think it's a little strange when people start to talk about their pettiness in kind of like a positive thing. I think it's not a very good, highly valued trait. Let's just say that. All right. Let's see. The title is called You Want Me to Make You Do Your Work for You? Well, now you can't take your break. All right. I have a coworker who is incredibly lazy. She's never been a hard worker, but within the last year, it's gotten bad. She could technically retire, but chooses not to for whatever reason, which I wouldn't mind if you actually did your job, but not only will she never help the office, she doesn't even get her own damn work done. As you can probably tell, this woman annoys the hell out of me for a multitude of reasons. We have a system in our office where all customer questions go into the same queue. If it's an email, a voicemail, part of an online chat conversation with another employee in another department, it goes into this queue. For whatever reason, anytime a coworker encounters a question that will take more than about 10 seconds to answer, she assigns it to me, which, yes, I'm very knowledgeable about our department. However, this woman has worked here 3 times as long as I have and should know these things herself. Today, she assigns me a question, and as soon as I read it, I have no idea why she assigned it to me because she should have assigned it to my boss or talked to my boss about it. As mentioned, I assign it to my boss and then go and tell her about it. During the beginning of our conversation, I overhear said coworker on the phone ordering food for lunch. She usually hangs up the phone, waits about 5 minutes, and then heads over to pick up the food. Well, I'm still in my boss's office talking about this question. I should probably mention my manager loves to talk, and while I'm usually trying to slowly back out of her office to end the conversation, this time I take a seat and proceed to actually engage. So, minutes are ticking by, and my coworker can't take her break because someone always needs to be in the office, and obviously I'm unavailable. At one point, I kind of tilt the chair so I can see her out of the corner of my eye, and I could tell she's just itching to run out of here, but she can't leave. What should have been at most a 5 minute conversation turned into a 20-minute conversation. Then I added a little more revenge because as soon as I left my manager's office, I ran out of her office to use the restroom to delay her break even further. I can't tell you how satisfied I am. All right. Escape fan, I applaud you for having your little petty revenge moment, but I do gotta say, in terms of pettiness, ooh, I would have gone a lot further than that. But that's besides the point. I'm not trying to up one you at all. Just in fact, I mean, it is just your story, but it is a situation that happens actually quite frequently. And I do gotta say, was the moment honestly worth it? I would say probably not. I would say probably not. In the grand scheme of things, um, I don't think I don't think you accomplished much by that. Usually, petty moments I feel like, have a much more satisfactory conclusion. Yours wasn't quite up there, so I think I'll rank your story about a 4. I do think it's a little petty because you had your little moment of annoyance over time and you found one little thing you could do that day to cause her a little bit of an inconvenience. So I will give you that. But this still results in the very same thing the next day. You still have the same problems the next day. Even though it caused her a bit of a delay, ultimately, it didn't do much, but I will say I've had very similar moments at my job as well. Lazy people will always find like the all sorts of type of ways to avoid doing work. And in fact, it's interesting because you spend so much time talking to your boss, not doing work. And I understand you do work usually most of the time, so I'll give you that. But that's actually very much used tactic from lazy people to get away with not doing work because it's kind of hard for somebody to call someone out when it's the manager that's causing the worker to not do work essentially. And I don't even know how managers sometimes don't realize how much of a distraction they are and how much of an annoyance they are to the other coworkers. This happens a lot actually on my job, but that's I'm not going to get into that, at least not today. All right, guys. I think this episode has been decently paced. We've talked about a couple of things here and there, and I think we have come down to our very last segment. We are going to be ending it off with a very interesting tale from another Reddit user in our Am I the Asshole segment here on our podcast. And if you have not been listening to the podcast for a very long time, just understand this is something I look forward to. I like to put my 2 cents, and to be honest, I kind of like when I think completely different than everybody else. In the last Am I the Asshole story we heard from my last podcast, me and my coworker actually felt pretty much the same in terms of believing that the user was not an asshole. But everybody in the comments seemed to have thought the other way. And I personally still do not understand how that was even possible. But I'm okay with that. I just have to come to realize that it just is what it is, and sometimes that's gonna happen. So, but this time around, we'll see if we are the ones in the wrong. This is a very good one. It is very long, and there's a lot of details, so that's good to hear. The title of this one is called "Am I the Asshole for Laughing at My Stepson and Ruining His Wedding?" And I wasn't expecting my camera to out of nowhere die, so it really okay. So it didn't really die. Just sometimes the temperature could get too high, and it has to turn off to cool down and everything. It's kind of annoying. Usually only happens with like an hour of recording, or if I'm recording in 4K, which I'm recording in 4K, right? Asshole for laughing on my stepson and ruining his wedding. And now, when I had first seen that title, because I saw it, choosing the stories, I was like, wow, that's kind of a dick move. I'm not gonna lie. Like, yeah, I mean, he's laughing at somebody's wedding. How do you even get away with that? But we'll find out. And people have been saying that they're not the asshole. And that's the reason why I wanted to see this story. I'm like, how are people coming to that conclusion? I'm wondering if they think or if the stepson did something, you know, that they would consider the laughing justified. Let's find out. Throwaway shortened for character count. For context, I've been married to my husband for just over 20 years. We started dating when my stepkids were 5 and 3. Our kids are Adam, 28, stepkid number 1, Ben, 26, stepkid number 2, Charles, 20, David, 17, and Ellie, 13. Adam is getting married at the end of the summer to his fiancee, Alice, 27. We have all been very excited for them. All of the kids have roles in the wedding. Charles is the best man. The other 2 boys are the groomsmen, and Ellie is a junior bridesmaid. Last weekend, we had a dinner for my husband's birthday. All of our kids attended along with Alice. The topic of the wedding came up again, and this is where it started to go downhill. Ellie brought up that she was so excited to go dress shopping and that we plan to go to a bigger city in a few weeks to get her a dress, and me a stepmom of the groom dress. At that, Alice looked at Adam sideways and responded that we only needed to worry about one dress, Ellie's. Ellie kind of laughed and said, "What are you expecting mom to wear? A suit?" Alice responded with, "My name isn't going. You know we're keeping our guest list very limited to only family and few close friends." What? Adam and Alice have been to our house numerous times for holidays, dinners, just to say hi since they've been engaged. This has never been brought up. Pretty quickly, things escalated. The Cliff Notes version is that Charles asked them to clarify if they were choosing to uninvite me now or if I was never invited. Alice confirmed the latter. Why? Adam said it's because I'm not his mom. Charles, David, and Ellie argued with Adam and Alice that none of them were going to go if I wasn't invited. That it was cruel to leave me out when I've been his parent for a majority of his life and loved him just like my own. My husband and I admittedly sat there for a minute just fucking shocked. Adam finally turned to my husband and said, "Well," my husband told him he wouldn't be going either. Adam just turned to me and asked if I was really going to let everyone ruin his wedding on my behalf. Here's where I might be the asshole. I just laughed. I don't know what came over me, but the entire thing was just so ridiculous that laughing was the only thing I could get out. I told my husband I'd be waiting in the car and left, then promptly bawled my eyes out. Anyways, Charles, David, and Ellie are not talking to Adam. Adam called my husband yesterday to try to smooth things over. He was still adamant I'm not invited and it's their wedding. He also requested I apologize for laughing at him. My husband told him tough shit. It's their wedding and they can invite whoever they want, but they can't control who will actually go. He said they owe me an apology and that Adam should be ashamed of himself. I'm getting texts now asking WTF I did and why I'm being a step monster and ruining the wedding. Am I the asshole? Holy crap. Okay, no, great. This is great. I get to, for the first time in a long time, agree with the majority of what people are saying, and it has nothing to do with what they're saying. Uh, I I'm not gonna side with the comments just because they're leaning one way or the other. I always come to my own conclusion, but it's nice to see that I will be aligning with them this time around because I usually don't. Wow, this step kid is actually a piece of crap. I'm not gonna lie. Wow, I feel really, really bad for the stepmom. That is tough. I'm so sorry for you, and I'm so sorry that somehow, some way, this is a situation you're in now. I'm very curious how this ended up happening, though. And wow, that type of miscommunication and confusion is beyond me. Like how they missed the whole stepmom wasn't invited, that's crazy. And why isn't the stepmom invited? It makes absolutely no sense. 20 years, she's essentially been the mom to the stepkids. I cannot believe that now this is what they that's how much they value their stepmom, or no, that's how much he values his stepmom. Because here's the thing, it is totally okay to invite whoever you want to your wedding, and you shouldn't feel necessarily bad about that. But this is usually a topic or a conversation about like extended family or friends, not like immediate family. Stepmom is an immediate family member. I I'm it's just sucky. It's sucky because you think you've come to build a relationship with someone, and then you end up finding out that perhaps there's been a misconception of the whole thing from the start. And that is why I feel really bad. And I actually applaud everybody else for siding with the stepmom. They should be holding their ground, and that's what should happen. And Adam, I'm sorry, playa, but you did this to yourself. Like this is all on you, and I hope it was worth doing something like that, and I hope he one day realizes just how much of an asshole he was and how much of a shitty decision that was. But okay, no, that's actually wasn't a very complicated response. It was an easy answer for you. Yeah, it's come to that already. It's the ending. All right, guys. I appreciate you guys for having listened, hopefully, to the whole podcast. Again, make sure you tune in. Fridays, I will be continuing to upload this as long as nothing crazy happens that stops me or prevents me. I will do my best to upload these, and I still got to get the whole Spotify and Apple Podcasts updated because those were the main sources I used when I listened to podcasts. Now I do mostly listen to podcasts on YouTube in video format, but that wasn't always the case, and I know there's still tons of people that don't. So again, I appreciate everybody. Make sure you like and share and subscribe, and uh, whatever else you're able to do, let me know if you agreed or disagreed with anything I talked about, because these are, in a way, opinions. I mean, they actually are, in fact, opinions, but their opinions, I believe, are correct. And you probably have your own opinions, and you probably, you know, think your opinions are correct, and that's okay. There's never a true answer there, usually. And yeah, I'll see everybody later.